Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Clifford Stephan. How you doing? Not Stephen Clifford, not to be confused for the other guy.
Right, I get more of that than the right way, probably. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Len. I really appreciate it.
So I want to ask you a question. How do you prepare for a triathlon?
Yeah, me and my buddies had an interesting philosophy that that pretty much no one else did. It was be very cautious to not overtrain. So that's code name for sort of half-assing it as much as we can get away with. So I played water polo, so we were kind of used to taking a bit of punishment, but we would obviously swim. Swimming wasn't an issue, but you don't really make a lot of money on that because it's only 1.2 mile swim. It's a 56 bike and it's a 13 run. So we basically did a couple of rides up. I was in the Bay Area, so we did some rides up in kind of the Saratoga, Santa Cruz Mountains. We went for a couple long rides, did a couple swims, and then a few runs. And so we just kind of tried to enjoy it, not tried to make the podium, but just kind of eke our way through. Because it was it's like 70 miles total for the half Ironmans. So
Yeah,
it's a bit of a schlep.
Well, yeah, for sure. And I'm curious about, I understand training physically, and you're probably right. I talked to a lot of athletes before. I said overtraining is probably the worst thing you can do. Undertraining is probably not the best either. So you have to find the middle ground. But what about nutrition? What about like things that you put in your body as you're going through this? Do you have to have carbs? Do you take anything with you?
Yeah, and to kind of timestamp this, I'm 52. I think I did my last triathlon probably around 45. So I'm kind of out of that realm at this
Sure.
point and kind of turned the page. And anecdotally, I also was still regularly drinking. So I drank for about over 30 years. So
Well,
started
you
drinking
just stepped
14.
on my next question. I was going to ask you what's the best alcohol
Well,
to consume while you're training for a
well,
triathlon.
well, again, there wasn't a lot of awareness there, but I guess I was just kind of trying to shine a little bit of a light that I have a degree in nutritional science, and so I knew all kind of the typical prescribed diets when it comes to carbo loading and all that stuff. But I guess my point is I see things a lot differently and more clearly, and have since experimented. And so yeah, and that was like 7 years ago. But yeah, it was kind of the typical stuff. I think nowadays there's a little bit more emphasis on protein and that supporting lean body mass, and that being kind of your longevity muscle is your muscle, especially as you get north of 50. But yeah, but that wasn't as much. So yeah, I think it was just the typical kind of meat and pasta and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's gotten a little uh, more defined and focused with all these talking heads like Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman and all these great talking heads. So you can get some pretty cool latest insights on that.
So would you change your approach? I'm the same age as you. I'm 52 also. And I tore my meniscus in my knee, both sides. So my running career, not that I had one, is over, but I still try to hike and all that stuff. And I think what I've been talking to with my surgeon is like, listen, since you're active, if I go in and snip everything, I don't have anything to replace that with. So once I snip it, you're going to be a candidate in the next 10, 15 years for full knee replacement because now you have hardly any meniscus left for that. So what's happening, I think, as I'm starting to talk to a lot of people in the space is if you work out and you supplement sufficiently with all those different things, your muscles can sort of compensate for that area as well. So yeah, it's not perfect, but maybe you can avoid, getting cut and then scar tissue and all those other things. So in terms of learning from what you've done in the past, if you were, and I know you're not doing it now, but if you were, what would you do differently? Obviously not drink. That's one.
Yeah. And again, to get a little bit of my backstory, I was very, very physically active, kind of a health nut. I played water polo, soccer, tennis, I swam, I surfed. And yeah, I always kind of kind of thought of myself as a pretty sporty guy, and drinking socially for decades kind of started to hammer me in my late 30s, early 40s, and kind of dragging ass and not feeling great, and really trying to intentionally kind of re-engineer how to like override my physiology with something that I didn't realize at the time. Alcohol is so great at kind of negatively impacting these key areas of your health, your sleep, your diet, your fitness, and your mindset. And so once you start building up some wear and tear, like most guys do in their 30s and 40s, and focusing on their career and other things, it becomes pretty tricky to restore your health and make inroads in some of these key metrics when you're still regularly harming them with regular alcohol use. And so there was a lot of keen insights that I had, because again, I didn't really have any intention of not drinking. I wasn't a problem drinker or an alcoholic. I was just doing it like all my buddies were, and we had a blast with it. But yeah, definitely, it has its limitations, and as you with tolerance and age, it starts becoming a little bit of a different equation. So I was diligently really, had the time, money, and energy to really kind of try to turn over every, health protocol and meditation and breathing exercise to kind of try to have my beer and drink it too. But ultimately kind of hit a wall and said, okay, I'm gonna give this a year and see what happens. And yeah, that was really transformational, and it was a really huge gift. And yeah, it was just so foreign with my peer groups. We just don't, again, it's such a part of our identity and what we do and how we do it, that it was it was super tricky for me to figure out. And when I started having these conversations with really good buddies that love and trust me, it was kind of like I realized pretty quickly that there wasn't really any appetite for the conversation, because it just hasn't been a part of our vernacular as dudes for forever. And so someone was going to need to be that asshole to kind of start talking about it and shedding some light. And so that's what I've been having fun doing the last 3 or 4 years.
So what was your relationship with alcohol previous? I mean, I'm sure like going through college and all that other stuff, and as a kid, and what is your relationship to alcohol now?
Yeah. And, it definitely changes. I think that's the tricky part. That's one of the many tricky parts about alcohol, is that, it changes as your physiology changes and as your tolerance to it changes, and as you stack on more responsibilities, as your body ages. But yeah, like I think it's pretty typical dynamic, high school, you're trying to talk to girls and whatever, and go to parties and socialize and all that typical stuff. College, more the same. And then you get into corporate America, and they're using that to paper over sometimes some boring events and some people that you wouldn't necessarily be hanging out with. But yeah, you kind of go for it, and you go pretty big, and it's pretty fun. And then yeah, like I said, it was just such an important integral part of how we went to events, how we did cookouts, how we what we did after sporting events, etc. So it was just super part of things, and how you socialize. And so eventually I was by no means like a savant at picking up on this. But yeah, it was like kind of like, okay, yeah, this is a little bit of a predicament, because how I celebrate and reward and relax and unwind is like making me look and feel like crap a lot of the time. And I don't want to be that old. I don't want to be that old guy cliche like Al Bundy that's, slumped on the couch talking about, how things were used to be. And so, yeah, I started kind of turning over a lot of stones and asking a bunch of questions and doing a lot of self-experimenting on myself to try to figure that out. And of course, the experimentation was everything but alcohol, for most of that. And then I finally kind of did the alcohol kind of last, reluctantly.
Yeah, I want to jump into that, but let's start with sort of your origin story. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Silicon Valley. Kind of weird place to grow up, but Sunnyvale, basically right by Cupertino, Palo Alto, all that. So, and yeah, it was cool. And yeah, we're Gen X. I think we had it pretty good, as once the dust settles and we kind of see where the younger generations are headed. But we took our lumps, but yeah, we had a hell of an adventure. We didn't have phones to distract us. A lot of playing outside and a lot of sports, and yeah, it was a really good fun place to be. And yeah, I got to surf and stuff like that. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, kind of in Central California for college, and that was a lot of fun. And yeah, I got a degree in nutritional science, but I didn't wind up using that as a career. And I got into human resources, and technology was everywhere. So I worked at a lot of tech companies and human resources, eventually started my own consulting firm in compensation, which is a facet of HR where we design, employee and executive pay plans for companies. And I did that for about 20 years. And then I just recently shuttered that. And yeah, I'm all in with this passion project that kind of started up around COVID time where, I'd kind of gotten through my, again, lifelong drinker, had a ton of fun with it, but yeah, I was starting to kind of feel the headwinds. And so did something kind of outrageous that none of my peers tried, and it worked killer. And a lot of the health protocols that I was talking about actually work really well. They were just kind of done out of sequence. And so, and to round back to your question about how my relationship with alcohol is now, is like, it's really good, because it's a weird substance in that, like, the longer you take a break from it and the more you learn how to have fun and enjoy life without it, the more epiphanies you get and the better you get at, just enjoying yourself. And alcohol works really well when you're regularly drinking it, but when you stop drinking it, then it stops working very well. And so when you start back up, you kind of almost have to turn that machinery back on, which I did. Like I said, I wasn't looking for sobriety. Most of our members aren't. Maybe about 25-30% of them continue to rock their vacation. But what I found is the longer the vacation you take, they're kind of 3 to 12 months. The longer the vacation you take, kind of the less you drink long term. And then, oftentimes, again, if guys drank for 20 or 30 years, even a year off isn't going to necessarily, have them never drink again, but some will. It's really a preference thing, and it's kind of a history thing. But it's just been really insightful, because like I said, I just think it's such a weird substance, and you have so many different positive associations with it. But again, you're changing, your place in this earth is changing. You're no longer like some snot-nosed high school kid. Like, you have a career and you have a family. And I think it's really common for my peers to kind of want to continue to be that fun guy they were in high school or college. And ultimately, I found that if you want that beer commercial that they're selling you, you're a lot better off learning how to have fun and enjoy life without it. But then, yeah, it's like, and it's not like there's not other tools in our tool belt. There's low dose edibles, there's CBD, there's nicotine gum. It's not sobriety. We're not pointing fingers, but alcohol is kind of the master key that you need to kind of turn off, because it really changes your brain. Even like 3 or 4 servings of alcohol, which could be, you can almost find in one strong pour of a cocktail per week, will start changing your brain in really bad ways. It lowers your impulse and your impulse control and discipline. So again, when it comes to diet and lifestyle and having another drink and all that, you're really starting to, you're going to struggle to have healthy habits as you're just busy and everything's so convenient and all that. So, and alcohol's everywhere.
So let me just go back to childhood a little bit. I'm sort of familiar with the area. I used to fly to San Francisco, San Ramon. I had meetings there. My daughter goes to Berkeley, so I'm up in the area. So I'm in LA and I grew up in Philly. So I have a sense, like, sort of the communities. And you're right. We used to get our bikes and go ride our bikes and hang out and play hockey or whatever on the street and do all that stuff as kids that, our kids don't really do these days anymore.
Right.
But growing up, were your parents together? Do you have siblings?
Yeah. So I have an older sister and a younger sister. My parents are still together, so that was really cool. And yeah, Sunnyvale definitely wasn't a San Francisco or even a Palo Alto. It was a little smaller, but yeah, it was pretty close to Moffett Field. And yeah, it was really a hub for Silicon Valley. I mean, Apple was right down the street, and IBM and Intel and all that. So, but then again, there's like a lot of the orchards, there was like cherry orchards and stuff all around. So yeah, it was kind of just a weird point in time where you're kind of in this, like, it's not a small town, but yeah, it's not like some crazy skyscraper place either. But yeah, obviously a lot of amenities, and played a lot of soccer. And yeah, it was, it wasn't a perfect childhood, but it was a good childhood. And yeah, my parents, I think, did a pretty good job with me. Obviously, they're coming from different generations, and my dad was a little strict, but yeah, my mom was super wise and good advice. And yeah, kind of figured out how to, make it happen.
So you were a kid that was sort of into sports and stuff. When you were going to school, did you have an idea of sort of, this is kind of what I want to do when I grow up, or not really? Or did you want to be a professional athlete, or were you going to something else? What were your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I was really into soccer. We had the San Jose Earthquakes. There was like a pro that lived down the street from me. So yeah, that was probably something I thought I'd want to do. I was but yeah, and I obviously didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And then by the time I got into, and yeah, I was more typical guy, like more into sports and their buddies and less about school. But kind of tried to do the basics to kind of get stuff taken care of. And then got my degree at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo after going to a junior college, De Anza. So it wasn't like, again, fast track by any ways. I kind of took my time. And then my mom's like, hey, you're pretty good with people. You should go into personnel or HR. And so yeah, I got some contracts there, and that was, I was able to use my social skills to kind of just talk my way into that, and that opened up a lot of opportunities, and so yeah, that was a pretty cool ride, and yeah, definitely leaned pretty heavily on my social interpersonal skills to kind of just try to figure out the rules of the road and all that, but definitely more focused on the people than the work.
So, I get that for sure. You talked about some of the I guess impact on your health that alcohol has. I know there was a couple papers that came out. So my parent, I grew up. I grew up in Philly. I was born in Lithuania, where it was under Soviet rule. So my parents had this. They're not Russian, but like they still have the Russian mentality. You sit. I remember I was a teenager. We would sit at dinner and we would do a shot, like drink it. So alcohol was never a big thing for me because I grew up with having a shot at dinner. It was never like vodka or a cognac, usually mostly vodka. It was never a big thing for me. Yeah, I enjoy a beer. I enjoy a cocktail once in a while, but it was never a big thing. But I had a lot of my friends around me that, started in college or even before that. And I could see it was 2, 3, drinks at night, 4 drinks, getting in the car, which is a whole separate conversation. But, you know, we never knew the negative impact that alcohol had at the time. We knew, over drinking, your liver is gonna go, like all that stuff that, my grandpa used to talk about, who was an alcoholic as a matter of fact. And but my parents, a little bit of alcohol is fine, and they always have wine, and they point to these studies like, wine is good for your heart and all that stuff. But you were talking about Andrew Huberman. There was a study, he just had a person on his podcast talked about, even one drink, you're poisoning your body with alcohol. So is there a happy medium, or is it just like, this is just not good for you? There's no health benefit. It just everything's negative about alcohol.
Yeah, and real quick, I want to react to your story because yeah, it sounds like you were, kind of introduced to alcohol in a more kind of just less taboo way type of thing. And whereas me and my buddies, back in Gen X, yeah, we were, having older brothers buy us beer, and yeah, we were going pretty big, and we weren't drinking during the week because we were in high school, but yeah, we were partying pretty hard in on the weekends and trying to go to parties. And it's a lot about socialization and just kind of the misadventures that happen. But yeah, and we were playing water polo, so we were pretty hardcore athletes. And I think, you have that moniker of work hard, play hard. And so, yeah, legendary partiers, and guys are really, really going for it, and so I think that kind of stuck with us. And yeah, and then you hear these anecdotal, studies that, oh yeah, wine's good for your heart and all that, and obviously it's probably a little bit clickbaity, but yeah, Andrew Huberman and there's a ton of science that's come out, but yeah, they basically the jig's up. It's kind of no amount of alcohol is safe. It causes 7 different types of cancers. It creates a leaky gut. It shrinks your prefrontal cortex. It does pretty much anything and everything that you want in life. Like it F's it up. It lowers your testosterone. It tanks your sleep. Like again, a strong cocktail can lower your sleep quality by 40%. That's where you're restoring and optimizing your hormones, so you look and feel your best. So you have your energy. there's chronic inflammation from your liver, from the leaky gut, from poor diet and ultra processed foods that it increases your cravings for, as impacting your metabolic health. Yeah, a lot of, yada yada. I could go on and on, but yeah, at the end of the day, and then like I also mentioned, it's changing your brain, and that change in your brain from just regular alcohol use, even at small amounts, 3 or 4 servings a week for, a couple months, like that could take 3 or 4 months for your brain to get back to normal. And meanwhile, your baseline normal is higher stress, higher anxiety, discipline, and impulse control. So those are in a lowered mood. So you're really kind of lowering your states. And then you have this thing that you'll find everywhere, and it's in all your shows, that will temporarily elevate that state, and then, with tolerance and age, it's this kind of a dangerous equation where you wind up kind of paying more for less results. And it's pretty easy to get stuck when it's everywhere and it's socially acceptable and it's part of your identity and all that stuff. So it's tricky. And again, we're not here to like demonize alcohol and, knock it out of people's hands, but it's just trying to have a little bit more of a conversation. And ultimately it's really a health and wellness and performance play, and really, living the life that the beer commercial promises. I'm, at my 50th birthday, I went to Nicaragua and surfed some 10-foot waves in a third world country that was pretty sketchy, but, went with a high school buddy. And it's cool to be doing shit like that you might not even be able to pull off in your 20s. So that's kind of what it's about. And it's about giving guys options. And it's not like there's not very good tools to have in your tool belts, and you can skin that cat different ways, based off of preferences and, with other substances. And again, I'm not trying to trade one vice for another, but let's be adults here. A lot of people are doing a bunch of stuff anyway. So if you could figure out a protocol that works for you, and you can restore your health and live the life that you want, and, I think that's worth looking into for sure.
Yeah. And I just want to preface, I mean, there are people that actually have, real issues with alcohol, and sobriety may be the key for them. There's genetic predisposition to alcohol dependence. So if people have these, be aware of your genetic predispositions. Maybe in those people, even moderation wouldn't be something that they should really, look at, maybe abstaining. Once again, I don't know. I'm just saying that moderate drinking, or as you said, looking at other substances, and it may not work for everyone. And if somebody has an issue with it, they definitely, should continue looking at sobriety in it. But I'm just curious, how do you, like, I have friends of mine have what I would consider, 2 or 3 drinks a night, 4 nights a week. That's probably excessive to me, maybe not to somebody else. You would probably agree that may be something that is more than what you should be consuming. How do you have that conversation with somebody? How do you get them to want to take a break? Like, how do you talk to your pal and say, hey man, you know what? This drinking thing, really, I can see it's impacting your health, and you're starting to, your biological age has been increasing, and I can tell based on, how do you have this conversation with somebody?
Yeah, no, it's funny. You got to be an asshole, and I've got a lot of that experience, so that helps. But yeah, it's an awkward conversation, and I want to just double back down on something you just said, because that's a good clarification, and I think that's oftentimes what makes my discussions around this topic a little bit third raily when it really isn't. So I am not targeting problem drinkers or alcoholics. In that case, you're absolutely right. Sobriety and no drinking. But I have terms like how to be smarter with your alcohol use, which is take an extended break from it, know how to enjoy yourself without it, restore your health, and then if you want to drink, you'll have some, but it'll be less, and for different reasons. And so we kind of have a different methodology. But yeah, we're talking a lot of shit about the realities that guys are going to face when they're ultimately going to be kind of pissing up wind with their physiology. As you get into your 30s and 40s, most people have metabolic dysfunction. They have belly fat, they have high blood pressure, they have bad blood work, they have maybe a fatty liver or visceral fat, a lot of, kind of somewhat sketchy pre-disease symptoms that, guess what? If you kind of hit the snooze on, you continue to regularly drink alcohol, even if you're taking proactive steps and working out and eating a kale salad, you're going to negate that with the regular alcohol use. That's going to continue to harm that. And so again, it winds up being kind of out of order. And then guys will be like, okay, well, I'm not really losing the weight. I hurt my shoulder, but I'm going to go make some more money. And so I can, buy a boat or whatever it is. And so they wind up spinning the wrong plate. And so it's really about, it's kind of just a really simple, health and wellness conversation. I can give you an example. There's a funny story. This was like, I got two guys to do a 1 year break on the same weekend, and this guy actually never drank again. He's like 3.5 years on his vacation, but it was funny. So I was supposed to meet a buddy. I was out of town and I was meeting a friend. We're supposed to golf, and he calls me up on my way, and he's like, "Hey man, would you mind if I passed on golf? I'm kind of busy. Work's kind of crazy." And I'm like, "Man, just play 9 holes. Like let's just come play 9 holes. Like we got to catch up." He's like, "Okay, okay." And so I see him and I'm looking at him and he's kind of mouth breathing. He's kind of looking stressed. And meanwhile, he's telling, we're catching up. He's like, "Oh, family's great. I'm killing it at my business. Everything's going really well." And he's like, he's not present. He's kind of stressed. He's kind of, he's just out of alignment. And I'm like, "Dude, what's going on, man? You're bragging and like, I'm looking at you and like, you're not aligned." I'm like, "When's the last time you drank?" He's like, "Oh, dude, I hardly ever drink, but I golfed yesterday. So I had a couple cocktails." I'm like, "Oh, that's why you're being such a mopey little witch right now. You're kind of in that spin cycle." He's like, "What are you talking about?" And then my other buddy kind of backed me up, and I'm like, "Dude, check out this book, Alcohol Lied to Me, that I read. It's like a 4-hour Audible book where the guy just really eloquently kind of talks about a lot of the kind of subtle negative feedback loops you get stuck in and stuff like that." So it's kind of, to your point, it's a little bit of, it's how guys relate. There's a little bit of shit talking, but at the end of the day, we're really a very serious health intervention protocol. It's like if you have belly fat, if you have sleep apnea, if you have high blood pressure, high triglycerides, high blood sugar, all that stuff, we can improve by not drinking and sleeping better and eating better and working out and being more mindful. And so, 9 out of 10, causes of death are preventable to diet and lifestyle. And so we can make really huge impacts. And so I think when guys start, carrying the weight for a long time, they start picking up prescriptions, they start getting a CPAP machine or a mouth appliance, it's going to mess up their bite. There's a lot of warning signs that we think are, just getting older, but in a lot of cases, alcohol is kind of accelerating that age and disease. And so I'm just kind of trying to like, bring some light in the darkness, because guys are conditioned to play dumb with it because it's our reward system and we don't want to stop. And so by continuing to play dumb with their alcohol use, it kind of forces them to start playing dumb with their health. Now I'm going to skip my physical. Oh, my doctor wants to give me some, pill. Like I don't want to, but I'm not going to address it. And so it starts becoming this kind of stupid game that really increases their risk. So we just kind of try to have some honest conversations and say, "Hey, check it out. We've mapped it all out. We'll tell you, you'll know what to say, you'll know what to do. There's great non-alcoholic beers. There's weed or, nicotine gum. It's not like you don't have any tools in your tool belt. And it's really going to be a land grab to go after and get to your optimal weight, increase your activity levels, sleep better, like track it, feel good about things. And then, after your vacation, you can make a judgment call on how you want to rock it, after your vacation. But really just kind of trying to empower guys to really restore their health during this limited window of opportunity where we can. Because again, once chronic disease starts, like our offer is kind of off the table, and it's you and your checkbook and your doctor and pharmacist, playing whack-a-mole with a bunch of side effects and not a very good quality of life. And so we're not cool with that. So we're kind of being the assholes talking about, another way.
What made you decide to create Booze Vacation?
And it was, if I would have had, I was kind of, having these awkward conversations with my buddies, and I didn't even want them to not drink. I just said, "Hey, check out this Audible book." They all had Audible accounts. Like, listen to this Alcohol Lied to Me. It's 4 hours. This guy's a broadcaster. He's like a British guy. It's pretty funny. And he's like, "This is a pretty crazy book, and it's pretty eye-opening. And we love booze, so check it out." And they're just like, "No," like, and I couldn't even like, they wouldn't. Again, I wasn't saying, "Hey, stop drinking." I was like, "Hey, check out this book. It's pretty entertaining, pretty eye-opening." And it was when I realized I couldn't have a conversation with a friend about it, that I knew where this was headed. So I knew like these pre-disease symptoms were going to turn into chronic disease states for all of my buddies around me, because that's that's the game we're all playing. And I see that in California, and I see it in New York, and I see it in, I see it wherever I go. So that's, the my generation has that same playbook for fun and all that. And so I saw that it was a very predictive shit show. And so I was just so pissed that I couldn't, have those conversations like, hey, I'm your buddy. Like, you trust me. Like, why can't we have this conversation? It's like, they just couldn't hear it. So somebody had to kind of start coming up with kind of a fun marketing way to kind of start bringing up some of these concepts and really kind of work out some of these common issues around how to be social and how to get started and how to increase your, it's really just education and awareness. So you have more understanding of what you've actually signed up for, unknowingly. And it's, most guys aren't cool with it once they figure out what that is. And so that's the motivation that we use to get them to do these breaks. Because they're not cutting back or a month off. That scientifically does not work. You need 3 to 6 months, and a lot of my buddies would need a lot longer to really, get, the at-bats to get good at being social without it and to really upgrade your health and performance. So you're super stoked. So you won't want to give that up. And that's your kind of insurance policy.
So what happens in a booze vacation? Like, I just want to make sure that people have a visual. Is it you guys go on an island somewhere in, tents, and you sit around the fire, and somebody has to get a guitar, and you pass around the CBD drink instead of that? Like, what's the visual? What does that mean, booze vacation?
Yeah, that's funny. And it's funny. I've told like networking groups about it and stuff. I'm like, oh, I started this thing called Booze Vacation. Like, well, that's cool. That's something. I'm like, I tell them what it is, and they're like, oh, like something inside me said, I don't like that. I was like, I wonder why I said that. But it's almost, it was just kind of it was a way I started coining when I was on the 1 year break. I said, hey, I'm not drinking right now. I'm on a booze vacation, and it kind of like made people laugh and got them off the case. So it's kind of just a way to kind of put lipstick on the pig of an idea, and it kind of just as a terminology. So just kind of a fun way. And so basically it's a men's health and wellness, group. Yeah. And we're kind of kicking this off, and it's online, but yeah, we're absolutely going to have events and have contests where we're actually out and about and doing content, getting, traveling and things like that. But right now it's kind of just a vernacular and a meme to share. And like, instead of, hey, I got bad blood work, or hey, I'm on the wagon, it's kind of just sounds lame. It's kind of like, nah, I'm on a booze vacation right now. You should check it out. Like, oh, it's kind of like start to create some reverse peer pressure because your buddies are going to be looking better and having just as much fun. So it's just kind of a vernacular that I've created as
I like
a marketing vehicle.
Because I belong to men's groups too. We did all kinds of crazy things together. And I do believe there is something to be said in this tribal kind of concept of men holding each other accountable without actually a formal accountability program, quote unquote. And I think it really works well when you have to stand up in front of your friends, your peers, and be called out for stuff. So yeah, it makes total sense to me. I wanted to ask you sort of societal questions. So I had conversations with a producer who makes films and TV shows in Hollywood, and I was talking to him about cannabis, and cannabis is legal in California, 33 states and all that stuff, even for adult use. But commercials, TV shows, like you still see the guy coming home from work, pouring himself a little bit of a scotch or, some bourbon or whatever it is. You don't see the reality of, I'm going to take my gummy, I'm going to cut it into 2 pieces and, share one with my wife or whatever it is, or I'm going to roll a joint. And the reality is that a lot more people do that nowadays, at least in the circles that I'm familiar with, than, come home and like, oh my God, don't talk to me. Let me, have my couple cocktails, or honey, bring me my martini like they used to do in the 50s. That doesn't happen anymore. Do you see that there's this pressure? And is there a way to shift this pressure from what we visually encounter with TV, media, and all these other things to not have alcohol, highlighted as this is the thing that makes the party go much better?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question above my pay grade, but I think at the end of the day, they spend 10 billion a year on advertising, the alcohol industry. I mean, how many different, celebrities have minted, like, if not millions, billions? Like, I mean, like George Clooney, like 800 million,
Yeah, how many
like
celebrity
Ryan
brands are
Reynolds.
there?
It's
Yeah,
like it's
exactly.
such a cash cow. And so yeah, I think it's all a little bit of fake news where there's like a lot of, it's just like it's in every show. And it's, hey, it's a prop. It's like, hey, I'm having this really important board meeting conversation. We need to clank it's just kind of part of our vernacular. But and I think that's kind of the funny part of it, as I kind of see the lines in the matrix now after my weird journey and experience, is like, hey, shocker alert, the alcohol that you're using to relax at the end of a hard day actually increase your stress. And so you're stressed, and you're just, you're kind of craving something that the alcohol cost. And so there's just all these false narratives that I think
Yeah.
um, are, kind of, a little bit sneaky. And yeah, but I think it's just become so habitual, it's so ingrained in our society. The science is somewhat still new. I mean, look at cigarettes. It's like they knew about the science for, probably 20 or 30 years, and they continue to be like, hey, yeah, a little bit is, probably okay. And they were able to kind of, sow a little bit of seeds of doubts, and milk that for another 10 or 20 years. And that's kind of, again, it's the younger generations aren't drinking it as much, but I think it still has a pretty good toehold in a lot of our
Oh
groups
yeah,
for obvious
especially
reasons.
especially when you go to college campus, you go to frat parties, nothing changed, still still the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Uh, how do you measure, like, within your group? Uh, how do you measure health outcomes? Meaning that, do you guys all say, okay, you know what, we're gonna start a baseline, we're gonna wear our wearable or ring device, we're gonna share, hey, my sleep score is better than your sleep score, kind of thing. Do you guys do any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so this passion project line has gone through a ton of different iterations, it's been 3 or 4 years. So we just relaunched our website. But yeah, we absolutely, as part of the guy can hop on boozvacation.com, gals can as well. We're staying in our lane, we're talking bro speak, but yeah, probably 35% of our signups are female. But yeah, you kind of, you set your goals, what you're working towards, you kind of set the things you want to avoid, like, divorce or cardiac events, or, kind of health scares.
Would you say
And
divorce? Did I hear you
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Just like,
So you
because
can set
like
a
you need a
goal,
future
like,
pace.
I want to avoid getting a divorce from my wife, and then you guys then keep that person accountable.
No, we're basically just kind of trying to help guys connect the dots on what they want from what they don't want, and what the likely scenarios are based off of, business as usual with booze, or kind of getting your shit together, and trying to clean some things up, and the habits especially that tend to erode. But yeah, as far as the metrics we typically at our early stages, yeah, guys are losing 30, 60 pounds. They're
Yeah.
sleeping better. They're performing better. They're playing music like they did in college. Their business productivity is way more on point. They're on a better groove with their family. Yeah, they're, instead of surfing and, surfing, now they're skateboarding too. And, so they're just picking up, there's just more time and energy and money to kind of just do more cool shit
I,
is
I, I was
is
gonna I was
what
gonna
is what but we are intentional about, we want guys to have their blood work done. We want them to self-assess their sleep and their diet and their mood and their stress and their performance and their brain fog and their energy levels. And yeah, we have a lot of protocols and healthy checklists around how to kind of get your sleep right, how to get, and we love wearables to kind of try to dial that in. Again, any guy that's regularly drinking is regularly sleeping like shit. And that's a really, sleep is a foundation for your mental health and for your physical health, and by proxy, your overall performance. Nobody takes their sleep seriously. Everybody's over caffeinated. So yeah, we can really quickly move the needle when it comes to your health and performance with our protocols.
I would think that corporations would be a really good kind of focus for your group as well. Like, if I'm going, let's just say, Microsoft's, or Google or Apple, since you're there. they would have better retention of their employees, or employees would show up to work more often. They would call out sick less often. There's all these different benefits of doing this. But you also mentioned that one of the things in the corporate landscape and society is you go to an event, there's always alcohol served. You go to play golf, you're at the 19th hole, all that kind of stuff. So is there an opportunity to do this on a larger level when you're having this conversation with corporations too? Hey, how about having your employees enroll in something like this?
Oh, absolutely. And again, I sold to corporate America for 20 years as I was designing them comp plans, and I know it. And I actually, my second podcast I got the CFO of like a several $100 billion company to take a 1 year boost vacation. And he's like, dude, this would be killer for my company. And, I've worked at Safeway where they had their own healthcare system and they're tracking these metrics. So absolutely, we can do all the above. And compensation is about engaging talent through obviously cash and stock and these things, but there's also these intrinsic things when it comes to engagement. And yeah, it's a little bit of a team building challenge and kind of just the education. And yeah, guess what? Guys are gonna lose weight and they're gonna get sick less, and they're gonna get some epiphanies and some insights. And as far as the events, the non-alcoholic beers nowadays are super legit. They used to be super phony and kind of like, oh, give me a break and O'Doul's or whatever. But there's so many good non-alcoholic beers and cocktails and
Why would you
kombuchas.
drink it?
There's no reason.
Does anybody actually drink non-alcoholic beers? Like, unless they're an alcoholic, do you even drink an O'Doul? I think I've tried an O'Doul's one time in my life, and I was like, what's the problem? I get other drinks, and I get like kombucha drinks and CBD drinks and infused drinks, but beer? I guess you gotta love the taste of beer that much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I did love the taste of beer. And obviously your taste buds kind of change when you're drinking, and then they change when you heal. But yeah, no, I've always loved beer, and I love non-alcoholic beers. And there's actually a fair amount of muscle memory, because I mean, you've been drinking beer for decades, and then now you're drinking a beer. And again, when you're not regularly drinking, the reason why somebody that's regularly drinking alcohol and then they try a non-alcoholic beer, they find it so repulsive, is probably 30-40% of the enjoyment of that drink is the drug, is the reality. And so you're not getting your full measure of tonic. And so that, once you don't have that need anymore and you don't have that scratch, you can really enjoy it. And yeah, I'll have a couple, no problem at an event. And it's like, you don't even notice it. And the other funny thing is like, you get a little buzz. You get like a little buzz because there's muscle memory there, and you're kind of like not thinking about it. So subconsciously, yeah, you're feeling more relaxed, and you got
placebo effect.
Yeah, totally. And really good beers, and none of them are skunky because they don't have the alcohol in them. So yeah, there's like Stella, Heineken, Bud Zero, Bitburger. There's a ton, Lagunitas, and there's hop waters that are really good. They're not beers, but they're kind of like a light hop water. And then you can always do like seltzer and lime. You can do kombucha. You can do all kinds of stuff. But yeah, and again, once you're not thirsty for alcohol, you realize that parties are about the people and all that. And so yeah, it's an interesting kind of lifestyle experiment for sure.
So what are your personal thoughts, and then the group and your boost vacation group as well, what are your thoughts on plant medicine?
Yeah, CBD and weed and stuff like that. Yeah, as I mentioned, I think it's a really, really cool tool to have. Honestly, if I look at my friends, I don't know, like, let's do a rundown. Like, probably over half of them are drinking and do weed in some form. And then probably 30% of them do weed and nicotine and alcohol, And so, we're not saying like, hey, you're on booze vacation and nicotine vacation and weed vacation. Again, we're trying to, since alcohol is socially acceptable, since it's going to change your brain and stress you out and change your discipline and impulse control in really bad ways, that's going to really erode your diet. I think it's helpful to have these tools and tools in your tool belt. That being said, you have to know thyself. If you have a cigarette or if you have some weed and that makes you go drink 10 beers, then yeah, you're probably not the right candidate for booze vacation. You probably have more of a problem. But yeah, there is some flexibility there. And then again, I think that's why people sometimes like kind of say, hey, what the hell are you doing here? But we're not serving alcoholics. And most of these guys, they're doing that stuff anyways. And we're not trying to swap out one vice for the other, but yeah, I mean, you can, yeah, low dose edibles, I think are killer. Like, I think they're great for a lot of different things and to just to get out of your head and to get some perspective and for creativity and all that stuff. And again, I'm not pointing or pushing anything, but I'm being an adult. And if you don't have a drug problem, then yeah, these are tools in your tool belt. And yeah, I definitely leaned on it during my year break because I wasn't looking for sobriety, but I needed to kind of rip the Band-Aid off with alcohol. So I definitely thought there's a lot of great value in it.
Do you have your own sort of healthcare routine, whether it's daily or practice that you do yourself?
Oh yeah. You want me to get into it?
Yeah, get into it.
Yeah, so all the stupid stuff you hear, I got a freezer chest, and so I'll do a cold plunge. I'll go outside and get a little sunlight in my eyes to kind of wake up my circadian breathing. I'll do like some Wim Hof breathing, some really deep inhale, kind of a shallow exhale, and get some breath, get some kind of deep oxygenation as I'm grounding, which there's a negative charge to the earth, so you can kind of get a little bit. It's supposed to be good for inflammation and kind of just kind of separating your red blood cells. And I try to get, I think it's the science is really showing the importance of, especially as you're getting into our 50s and north of that, you want to get sufficient protein intake. So definitely try to have 30 to 50 grams of protein in the morning. I'll usually have about 2 eggs, and I'll have a little bit of protein powder, a little bit of creatine, a little bit of a green powder, yeah, a fair amount of supplements, some fish oil, stuff like that. And then yeah, I try to get outside and get some sun and walk and lift a couple times, get some cardio in with the air bike, try to surf, try to do some stretching. And then in the evening, yeah, I've really geeked out on my sleep. Sleep's really important and can be really tricky. So I kind of try to, keep a consistent sleep schedule, have blue light blocking glasses. I'm still watching screens a little bit close to bedtime, not having screens in the room, make sure the room's dark, a little cool. I'm kind of a light sleeper, so sometimes I have earplugs. And then I take some magnesium and some vitamin D and there's a couple different supplements that kind of help relax you and can be beneficial. So, but yeah, it's really about keeping the lights dim and stuff like that. So to set your circadian rhythm, and then just trying to eat nutrient dense foods and move the body and stretch and be mindful, try to get in some meditation, kind of all the same soup you hear, but yeah. It could really some visualization, some positive self-talk, all that stuff, I think is all the stuff you hear. But yeah, I try to, you can kind of sneak that stuff in pretty quickly too. And you can stretch when you're watching TV, and you can, watch a YouTube video when you're on the exercise bike. So you can kind of mix it up or listen to an Audible book while you're walking and things like that. So it's a way to kind of multitask.
Yeah,
and continue to grow, get some, personal, professional development, spiritual stuff. I like Eckhart Tolle, a bunch of different stuff just to kind of figure out what's going on in your hamster wheel with this caveman brave and this in today's times. It's a trippy place to be for sure.
For sure. Yeah. And I agree. I think, everything you said makes sense. I do believe nutrition is a huge part of health and wellness, and I still think it's a personal thing for people. Like, we all know not to eat processed foods for the most part, but it's then, should you be a vegan? How much kale do you have? Do you should you eat meat at all? Like, I haven't eaten meat in 15, almost 16 years, but I eat fish. But that is what aligns with me. I'm not telling anybody do what I do whatever it is that suits you. I'm just saying that we all are individuals, and we should actually look at what the protocol is for us individually, specifically. But the ideas that you set forth, I think that can be implemented across the board for everybody. It doesn't matter if how much kale you have in one day or not. Eating dense nutrient foods, supplementation, understand your body, having a good sleep cycle, all those things make total sense. Hydration, etc. So, I have a couple of music questions to add. I'm a big music person. So,
Yeah.
do you remember, and if so, what it was, the very first concert that you attended?
Yeah, this one was pretty badass. I went to Monsters of Rock at Candlestick as a freshman because my good buddy's older brother took me under his wing with a couple of his buddies, and we saw um, Metallica, Scorpions, trying to get this right, and then Kingdom Come, and there was one other really good band. I can't remember, but yeah, it was Metallica at Candlestick, and it was we got there at like 9:30 in the morning, and then the show didn't start till like 2, and then it was like 2 to 11, and then we were trying to get out of Candlestick, and that took us like 2 hours. So it was like a death march, like, but it was a crazy cool show.
It was memorable.
Yeah,
What
that
was
was epic.
what was the last concert that you attended?
Oh, I was super stoked. I just saw Big Head Todd and the Monsters. So I really love their live Monsters. I think it's like Red Rocks or something like that. I'd never seen them, and I was asking a bunch of guys if they wanted to join me. They're like, "Oh, I saw him in high school. I saw him." Like everybody had seen him, and I'd never seen him. So yeah, and he did really well. It was really cool. We had a really good time. So I don't go to as many shows as I'd like to, but yeah, I did check that out, and that was sweet.
Very cool. All right, so another music question. In the next year, you can only listen to 5 albums. You don't have to name the actual name of the album. Like, it doesn't have to be like Pink Floyd The Wall. It can be just be
Yeah,
a Pink Floyd album. So what will be those 5 albums?
So it could just be artists.
Yeah, you can just say
Or
like Metallica or whatever.
yeah, like I mean, Bob Marley, Babylon by Bus, that live album, Big Head Todd and the Monsters, live Monsters, the Unplugged, Alice in Chains or Nirvana, Alice in Chains Unplugged or Nirvana were pretty epic. Throw in some Jimi Hendrix. There's too many albums to think through. And then yeah, and then I just have a bunch of other random stuff on my playlist. Let's see, what else would I say? Yeah, Kiss. I was into Kiss when I was a little kid, so I was a big Kiss fan. So maybe Dynasty or something.
Very cool. Yeah, I just had that as my record of the day, I think last week. So I do a daily record of the day on my social if anybody wants to follow.
Oh, nice.
All right. So final question. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Oh man. So I had some Kiss posters, I had some Star Wars, I think I had a kind of a light blue Star Wars drapes and bedspread. I had a piano. I had just crap everywhere. Like I don't know. It was a pretty small room, but yeah, I had my own window. It was pretty groovy.
Yeah,
Pretty groovy.
pretty cool posters though.
Yeah.
Where can people engage with you, Boost Vacation, social, whatever you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I have a pretty popular TikTok account. That's kind of where I've been geeking down. But yeah, I'm on all the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. But yeah, the boostvacation.com is a great spot where you can kind of land and see what the hell we're doing and why and how and get some resources. And if it takes some challenges and learn about some stuff, see some cool videos, and then when you're ready, we can kind of set you up to take a free vacation. We have coaching if you want that. And so yeah, you'll find a ton of information at boostvacation.com, and it's going to be brand spanking new. We got all these new features and functions and tools that we're super stoked to share. So yeah, please check it out.
Very cool. And my audience, I want to thank you for all the wonderful reviews. Keep clicking the 5 stars. We appreciate all the reviews. We appreciate all the feedback. It's been really, really nice. And thank you for purchasing the book, Making Cannabis Personal. It's available on Amazon or wherever you get books. And so even if somebody doesn't leave a very good review, that's fine. bring it anyway. We'll always looking for ways to improve. But Clifford, I want to thank you for your time. I think what you're doing is really interesting, and I think it makes sense for everybody to have some sort of break and just stop relying on substances controlling them. Get yourself to control the substances instead, like flip it around. So that's what I'm getting out of this conversation too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of a reset, because when it left unchecked, it could be, just like any habit, could be kind of tricky to unwind from. So yeah, trying to wave our hand and say, hey, it's not a stupid idea. Check it out. Give it a try. There'll be some good insights, good opportunity to restore your health, and yeah, update your playbook, which is always a good thing.
Cool, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Len.